Well, I'd like to welcome you to a first of a series of presentations on the apocalypse. And that's what we know as the end times. And we will look at the end times based upon a book that I've read, or I'm reading right now. And it's by David Jeremiah, and it's called The Book of Signs. And has anybody ever had a chance, an opportunity to read it, I suggest that you do. So it's really good, and it made me think of, okay, how can I bring this forward and bring this to a life of this? So we're going to look at the end times based upon how 5 nations, and these nations are Israel, Europe, Russia, Babylon, and America, and how they will impact the world as the end times merge. So our lesson 1 today is titled Signs of the Apocalypse, the Introduction, Israel, and Europe. Next slide, please. Now, consider you're in a large city unknown to you, and you found yourself lost. There are no signs, no street signs, or Google Maps to help you, like the city on the left. What is your immediate reaction? So you're in a big city, never been there before, no signs, and you need to get somewhere. What's your immediate reaction if there's no signs?
Panic.
Panic? Okay.
Ask someone.
Anxious?
Ask someone.
Ask someone? Okay, good. So, but you need, because why do you need it? Why do you need signs? Where do they get us to?
Go final
Your-
destination.
Your destination, right. There's a purpose, there's a destination. Okay, you're anxious. But now consider you're in a large city unknown to you, and you found yourself lost, like in the first one. But in this city, there are signs to help you. There are street signs in the city, like the city on the right. What is your immediate reaction now?
Signs.
Follow the signs. So you have a place where you want to go, there's a destination, you have to know where you're going to get to your destination. So there's definitely a difference of how you're going to feel if there are signs. So, yes, we often take signs for granted and do not think about them until we do not have them. Then we realize how essential they are to getting to our destination. So God has placed critical signs in our personal life journey. We all go through our journey in life, and because of that, God shows us where He wants to take us. In other words, God leads us. And so, in doing that, it's essential for us to get to where we need to go. And God will direct us in that. So God has placed critical signs in our personal life's journey. So signs do make a difference in, for one, our comfort level. Like in the first one, we were anxious and nervous. Second one, we're a little more calm. We feel much better. So we have to go to our destination. We have to get to where we're going to. So He's revealed to them us. God has revealed them to us in the highway of what I call human history. He's revealed to us in the Word of God. God used the prophets and the prophetic signs to confirm the events of the day as to what God wanted for His people. In other words, what is the will of God. Next slide. So now that we're going to be talking about the end times, that before now as a forerunner to the end times, God promised these signs, that there will several signs first must take place. First sign before the end times is the regathering of the Israelite people. And this happened in 1948 in their homeland. Why did this happen? There were two reasons why it happened. Why did it happen?
To fulfill prophecy.
God promised it, fulfill the prophecy. So that's the first one. What's the second one? Took them a long time, but yes, it did happen.
To become a nation.
Become a nation, yes. But there were events that happened. And what were those events that happened?
The Holocaust.
The Holocaust, Second World War.
Yeah, no, but something happened a little bit later after that.
The Six-Day War in 1967.
No.
So,
Happened with President Truman.
oh,
So after World War II, President Truman supported the development of a Jewish state in Palestine. And this was supported by the United Nations. So those were the two reasons why there was the creation of the country Israel. The second sign before the end times that are coming is the consolidation of European powers before the Antichrist's coming. And the prophet Ezekiel talks of Russia, who will lead an alliance to attack Israel. Now the third sign is the various cultural signs will emerge. And the prophets Daniel and Ezekiel and the Apostle Paul warns of certain things will happen. They mention things such as materialism and immorality as the signs of the time. Are we not in such a sign today? Sounds like we're right in the middle of it, doesn't it? I would say that yes, there has been materialism and immorality throughout human history, but probably not to the degrees as we see it today. It's probably quite a bit larger and more, and the impact is much greater in the world today. The fourth sign is the rise of radical Islam, as expressed in Ezekiel 38, chapters 38 and 39. And this will cause spiritual warfare and the persecution of Christians. And in Ezekiel 38, Ezekiel predicted the rise of Russia in the latter days. Russia combined with 9 other countries, and these countries will be mainly Islamic, and they will invade Israel. So the fifth and final sign is the sign of, before the end times, is apathetic Christians in the world. Apathetic Christians who do not care about the signs of the time that God has shown us. And they think of it, signs of the time. Now, I would like you to think of an expression or action of apathetic Christians in the world today. Think of one.
Lack of prayer.
Lack of prayer. Well, the one that comes to me that I think of is, it's all the same. There's no difference if I go to church or not. Jesus still loves me. You know, that's the sign of being apathetic. You know, basically saying, well, it doesn't really matter because God's still going to love me. It doesn't matter if I'm loving God, but it's God still loves me, therefore I really don't need to go. You know, that sign of being apathetic in the world today. And in doing that, what happens is a lot of people are feeling that my way is the only way or the right way because of that. And the importance of it is people feel that it's not really basically essential. So what we hope in these presentations is to inform followers of Christ to be vigilant, to watch for the signs that God has provided us, and to prepare ourselves in the final world as the final world events unfold. Next slide. So in this lesson, we are going to learn first why the nation of Israel is a sign to the world, and secondly, how Europe will consolidate into a single power and attempt to reign over all the earth. So let's go back right to the sign of Abraham. Now, what is the importance of Abraham to Israel and in salvation history?
Father of the nation. God called him out
God called him.
to the land that he was gonna promise him, which was
Right.
to Israel.
So there's a promise and a covenant. And in that, there's a special relationship. So God promises to make Abraham. So more than 4,000 years ago, God made Abram promise that is still in force today, shaping in the world we live in. So God makes a promise to Abraham in Genesis 12. In it, we read, "Now the Lord said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." Next slide. So, in other words, a covenant was made, and this covenant is a formal agreement made with God, with humanity, and in this particular instance, with Israel. And in it explained the rewards and the punishments that one is to expect if one keeps or does not keep the covenant. So there's legal obligations on each side, and then they are discussed. So God made a covenant with Abram and the Jewish people in the Abrahamic covenant. Next slide. So, we are talking about signs, and of course God made a sign with a relationship with Abraham. As a sign of this deep relationship, of this covenant with God, Abram was renamed Abraham. The name went from Abram to Abraham. And in Jewish cultures, a name change portrayed a new identity. And this new identity was to show that there was a purpose and a meaning based upon the name. And so therefore, when there was the name change, they realized that yes, there was a new purpose for the people. Now, God's four unconditional promises in the Abraham covenant were fourfold. They are, first, one, that God would, one, bless Abraham. The second one was that he would make out of Abraham a great nation. The Jews in Israel and many throughout the world. So it's not just in Israel, but also throughout the world as well. And they will be a nation. They will be a people with a territory, and therefore it was known as a land. It was called a territorial covenant. Thirdly, that God promised that Abraham would be a blessing to many. And so without the Jews, there would be no Bible, no Ten Commandments, no Jesus, no Christianity, and therefore it's not just for the Jews, but it is for the Jews as well. But it's all for all people. It's also a universal covenant. Fourth reasons of the sign that God will show us in the promise was that God promised to bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel, curse her. So this is what we know as a reciprocal covenant. It's reflective based upon that. And this promise by God to Israel was that he would support and aid Israel by supporting those countries who would support her. And those countries who would curse or bring harm to Israel, God will harm those countries. And God has been faithful to this promise. Can you think of one country who's been faithful to the support of Israel over the years? Who's been a big supporter of Israel throughout the years? First, yes, everybody can think of that. And can you think of who has been probably more blessed financially, economically, and that, based upon that? God promised that yes, he was going to bring this. He was going to support those who support Israel. And because they're supporting and aiding Israel, guess what happens? They're blessed. Next slide. So there are two prophecies of Abraham's covenant that have yet to been fulfilled. What are these two? So he promised that he would bless them, but there's something that hasn't, two things that have yet to happen. What are those two things?
Become more numerous than the stars.
Numerous, the stars, yes. So he promised them the land, right?
Yeah, the land's not all of the land.
It's not
given.
all of the land. So Israel needs, okay, next slide. Israel needs to inhabit all the land promised her in Genesis. And in that, and in Ezekiel 48. In Genesis 15 we read, "On the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying to your descendants, I have given this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. The Canaanites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, and the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites." So this describes to whom, but also to where the land will be. And in Ezekiel 48, the future borders and divisions are given to the 12 tribes of Israel. That God promises he will gather every single living Jew back to the land promised her. So every single Jew must go back. But then the second one is that Israel needs to turn to her Messiah, Jesus Christ. In Luke 13 we read, "O Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her, how often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings. But you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate, and assuredly say to you, you shall not see me until the time comes when you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Next slide. So we're looking here now at the signs of the apocalypse in that of the country of Israel. Next slide. So God selected Israel as the chosen people. They were a beloved treasure. And that God singled out and set aside Abraham because he was confident that Abraham would instruct his children and future generations to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is just and is right. Now the Israelite people were chosen for a mission. Thus they received the name the chosen people, the people of God. Now it's important to note that what the chosen people does not mean. I think oftentimes we have a misconception. People have a misunderstanding of what the chosen people means. It does not mean that as a people, the Hebrew people, the Israelites, are better than any race or of the people. What it does mean is that they are as a people, they are called for a special mission through a covenant with the prophet Abraham. And in today, they as a people are called to spread the word of God. So they're called the chosen people as for a mission. Not to see that they're better than others or anything such as that. And in today's world, there is the misconception by some that chosenness means ethnic supremacy. But within Judaism, there's a firm belief that God first entered into a covenant with Abraham, with the Jews. And that moreover, God has entered into a special relationship with all humankind as he is their creator. And as a result, all people are loved by God. Not just a particular race, but all people are loved by God. Now, with the misunderstanding of the meaning of the chosen people of God, to imply or mean ethnic supremacy. Can we understand now in the world today how there has been a dislike of Jews by some because of that? But with the coming of Jesus Christ, there is in what we call, there is the not just the people of God, but the new people of God. And this includes people of all nations, languages, and races. It has a universal character, calling together a people made up of Jews and Gentiles, not according to the flesh of a people, thou being Jews or Christians, but one in the Spirit of God. And at the basis of this newness, this universality, is the redemption accomplished by Christ for all people. Not just Jews, not just or Christians, but for all people. Next slide. So let's look, we're talking about about a prophet, and we're talking about the prophet Daniel in the Bible. So let's look at his background. So the Jewish people lost the Jewish-Babylonian War at the beginning of the 7th century BC. And the war ended with the destruction of Solomon's temple in 586. Now there was a large number of Judeans who were taken captive in Babylon, including the prophet Daniel, under King Nebuchadnezzar. And Daniel was the most fascinating of all the prophets. I knew very little of Daniel until I started doing some reading on it. And I go, this guy is incredible. I go, why is he fascinating? As he held the imagination of men from ancient times as he could interpret dreams. Not just tell you what the dream was, but the meaning of the dream. And also, moreover, as a prophet, Daniel encouraged, warned, and guided Israel in her actions, as a prophet would do. He would tell them what would happen if Israel failed to obey God. In other words, Daniel could predict the future as to what was going to happen. So people were really interested in him. And this caught the minds of the Jewish people as well as King Nebuchadnezzar. Next slide. So, the stories of the prophet Daniel, how many do you know up there? Do you recognize any of them?
Fiery furnace.
Okay, we'll go by the first one on the left. What is that
The
one?
dream,
Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
Yes, the dream.
the statue.
Kingdoms.
The four kingdoms. And that dreams of enormous stature, but they didn't know what it meant. The second one, fiery furnace. I think we know that one. Dreams of three young men in the fiery furnace. And this one talks about the importance of choosing your actions wisely. The third one, Nebuchadnezzar's madness. Nebuchadnezzar was warned in a dream that Daniel to Nebuchadnezzar that if he did not humble himself before God, that God was going to take away and acknowledge this, God was going to take away all his power. The fourth one. Party?
When they're writing on
Belshazzar's feast. Okay, that's chapter 5. He dreams of Belshazzar by taking articles set aside to use in God's temple and use them to toast other gods. And there is a danger of growing numb to the sacred things of God. Fifth one, I think we all know. What's that? Lion's Den. I hear that in the crowd. Of course, the lesson is to keep your mouth shut and to trust in God in every way and every day. And that God protected Daniel in times of trial, like in the lion's den. How about sixth one?
The beasts.
The beasts from the sea. That's chapter 7, that God knows the future and that reveals certain details to the future through his prophets. And the seventh one?
It's not a chapter 8, but it's the goat.
Or, yeah, it's the chapter 8, it's the vision of the ram and the goat.
Yeah.
And that God will bring an end to the oppression of the Jewish people. So these all have a different meaning and a different purpose. And so Daniel can tell a lot of these things to the people, and they were really interested in what it all meant. So let's go to Daniel chapter 2, the dream of the four kingdoms. Daniel lived in captivity in Babylon in 605 to 535 BC, along with his friends, and I always love these names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And Daniel was a member of what we call the ruling class, or the religious class from Jerusalem. And Daniel and his friends were trained as court officials. And though they faced pressures to conform to Babylonian society and give up the ways of their people, the Jews, they stood strong in their faith, and God blessed Daniel with wisdom and the ability to interpret dreams. And here there was King Nebuchadnezzar in his dream. And he saw a gigantic statue made of 4 metals, from its head of gold to its feet of mingled iron and clay. And as he watched, a stone not cut by human hands destroyed the statue and became a mountain filling the whole world. Now, with the inability of Nebuchadnezzar's wise men, the Chaldeans, to tell him the meaning of the dream, Nebuchadnezzar approached Daniel. And then the king threatened Daniel and told him, if you cannot tell me the dream and its meaning, he would kill him and his advisors. A little bit of pressure. Not only what's the meaning of you tell me the meaning of the dream, but first tell me the dream.
Tell me the dream.
And then what does it mean? Okay? Not an easy task. But Daniel asked for some time and he took it to prayer. Well, I think I need more than prayer. But God revealed to him the dream and its meaning. Next slide, please. So here's the dreams and its interpretation. The God of heaven, now just to note this, that the God of heaven considers world history from another viewpoint other than man's. We see the events and what happens. But for God, his people Israel are the most important people on earth, and they have been entrusted with the word of God. And because of that, they have a special, as I mentioned earlier, a special mission. Now God chose to the prophet Daniel in Daniel 2 that there will be 4 successive great world empires telling us of what will happen in the days to come. Now the first world kingdom begins with Babylon, and that's the head of gold up top, and it signifies the wealth of King Nebuchadnezzar. And there, at the present, this is where they are at the present time. But then he also predicted the future of what was going to come. There would be 3 successive kingdoms coming after that. And then the one that came after that was that of the second world kingdom will be that of Babylon. And it will be the Medo-Persians. And that is where you see the 1 chest of silver and the 2 arms that emerge. And these are the kingdoms of the Medes and the Persians. And they conquered Babylon in 539 BC. And the two arms symbolize the 2 nations acting as one. In other words, what does 2 nations need to hold? What do you need for your arms? You need a chest to hold it, right? You can't have that. Your arms are very good if you don't have a chest to hold it. Now, the third world kingdom will be the Greeks. And that's, if you look towards the middle, you'll see the belly and the belly and thighs of bronze. And then this is the time of Philip of Macedon and his son, Alexander the Great. Now, the bronze represented the power of a large nation. So, in a large nation, you need a large army, and these armies must have helmets and breastplates of bronze. And this characterized how they will be ready for war. So they could spread. They were powerful. But there's going to be a fourth world kingdom that will come, and that's that of Rome. And that is the legs of iron and feet of clay. Now the legs of iron represents the strength of Rome, and the clay is the feet and the toes, and that's the 10 toes represent 10 future leaders of Europe, of a future kingdom to come. And these 10 toes are 10 countries or leaders and are spreading out away from Rome. We all know that when you spread your wings too far, you can become vulnerable. And so, when we're looking at those four, did you notice how these four kingdoms succeeded each other? They flowed one right from the other, one right after the other, to this very day. And this is what just Daniel had predicted. Next slide, please. So the dreams interpreted by the four world empires, but there will be a fifth and final kingdom. And that's the millennial kingdom of Jesus Christ, which will last forever upon his second return. So we can conclude that some form of Roman Empire must emerge in the end times. And Daniel says this fifth kingdom, before Christ's second coming, will be the time of the Antichrist. It will be such a terrible time, it will be truly desolate. Finally, Christ's second coming will happen, and Jesus will reign over all the earth. Next slide. So this time of the Antichrist, Daniel talks about it in Daniel 9. He says, it is about the prince who is to come, and that is the Antichrist. And this Antichrist will make a peace treaty between the Arabs and Israeli for 7 days, which really means 7 years. And this sounds good as it offers peace, but it will not be, as the Antichrist will break the treaty in the middle of it, signaling the countdown to Armageddon. So it looks like it's going to be good because it's offering peace, but it ain't going to be good at all. And this is sort of reminds us of what St. Paul said is the warning signs that God has provided us. He said, awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation is nearer than we first believed. And that's basically in the times we are right at the present. Next slide. So the next slide talks about Europe and the new common market. Now this Roman Empire that we talked about earlier with the 10 toes, the Roman Empire of Alexander the Great, over a period of time, breaks apart. But there's going to be a new tenfold Roman Empire that comes together. Winston Churchill said that we must come together and constitute, he's talking about Europe, must constitute a kind of new United States of Europe. So in 1948, a new common market was thought of. And then in 1957, there was what we called the Treaty of Rome was signed, the official document. And this brought 6 European countries together into what we know as the common market. And in 1973, England, Ireland, and Denmark joined, followed by Greece in 1981, thus making 10 countries. And those 10 countries are representing the 10 toes in Daniel's dreams. Next slide. And Daniel promised in Daniel 7 that these countries will come together. He stated, "Now after these kingdoms there shall be one, who is different and arise from the first ones and subdues these three kingdoms. It is the leader who will change times and laws." And it's going to be where it's very powerful, and it's going to go in a way, as we would say, that it's going to bring a lot of destruction. And now this is in place with the president of the European Parliament. All those 10 countries come together, there's a European government, and then there's one president who is elected based upon from all of these. And this one person will be a devil of a man, as it says so in Scripture. How and when is yet to be determined. Will be nothing as we have ever seen before. A one world ruler who promises to free everyone from the judgments of God. Next slide. So, the main message of Daniel in the Bible is threefold. First, that God will be exalted as all glorious. And Daniel knew that the obedience to God would bring them to this end. The second was Daniel's obedience was a loud statement not only to the Gentile world, but also to his fellow Israelites, the Jews, that God is worthy to be worshipped, even in the bleakest of times. The third main message of Daniel is that Daniel's vision operates as a sign as to what we can expect that will happen in Europe, leading up to and after the end times. So we can see how God uses signs in and throughout history, like he did in the prophet Daniel, to show us God's will. So I'd like to thank you for coming to this presentation. And the signs of the apocalypse, Russia, Babylon, and America will be our next presentation. And it will talk about basically what I did today, but more of a further development of this. Any questions or thoughts?
This is more of a comment.
Okay?
When I was in Bible school, Brother Killam taught us Revelation and Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, it was